God bless you, ma'am. Now I am going to report the speaking skills, definition, stages of competence, and enabling skills. What is speaking? Speaking is the delivery of language through the mouth. It is a productive skill in the oral mood. The second of the four language skills, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And it is usually requires at least one listener. When two or more people speak or talk to each other, the conversation is called a dialogue. Speech can flow naturally from one person to another in the form of dialogue. There are two types of speaking. It could be formal or informal. Informal speaking is typically used with family and friends or people you know well. For example, "Hey, it's me. How are you?" Huwag siya ganang daily conversation sa inyong family or sa casual conversation sa family or friends. While the formal speaking occurs in business, academic situations, or when meeting people for the first time. For example, good morning, this is Anne. May I speak to Leah, please? So there are four types of speaking skills. First is the fluency. Fluency is about how comfortable and confident you are in speaking English. The term speaking fluency is linked to the meaning of communication according to Harmer. For example, in a conversation, a learner can make a grammatical error such as Maria live in America. Live versus lives, but the learner can still speak the sentence with some fluency. Number 2 is the vocabulary. The more interesting words you know, the stronger your speaking skills. Vocabulary can be defined as all words known as used by a particular person. Nevertheless, a person knowing a word does not mean that he or she will be able to comprehend or utilize the word in a proper manner. The reason being there are several characteristics of word knowledge which are in turn utilized to assess word knowledge. Word knowledge could be of two types: the productive or achieve and the receptive or receive. It has been observed that a person's receptive vocabulary is longer than productive vocabulary. For example, a child who cannot speak, write, or sign can follow quite a number of instructions given in a language which he or she is used to. But when the child learns to speak, sign, and write, then his or her vocabulary becomes active. Therefore, it can be said that productive vocabulary are those words that are produced in reference to a suitable perspective, and those words or those vocabulary should match the envisioned connotation of the speaker. Receptive vocabulary is those words or that vocabulary which we get to hear or which we receive from somebody else in the language we are exposed to. Third is the grammar. Grammar does not matter, and the fewer mistakes you make, the better your speaking skill will be. Grammar also helps us to convey information in a way that the listener will recognize and understand. Fourth is the pronunciation. The basic rule of thumb is that an average speaker can speak and be understood. Speakers of different languages tend to develop different muscles for pronunciation. When we speak a foreign language, our muscles may be not well developed for that language and will find pronunciation more difficult. By practicing the foreign language pronunciation, our muscles developed and our pronunciation improves, as well as creating correct vowel and consonant sounds using the muscles of our mouth, tongue, and lips. The following are other important aspects of pronunciation. The word stress, it emphasis on certain syllables in a word. The sentence stress, it emphasis on certain words in a sentence. Linking, joining certain words together. And the intonation, the rise and fall of our voice as we speak. There are also 4 stages of speaking competence. First is the unconscious competence. The person in this stage is unaware that he does not possess the skill. Further, the person does not generally understand the importance of motivation for having the skill. In other words, unconscious incompetence is when you are doing something wrong and you don't know how you are doing it wrong. A learner in unconscious incompetence will respond differently than in conscious incompetence. So, have you ever stopped to think about the fact that you are probably brushing your teeth wrong? Like, don't brush long enough, brush too hard, and etc. That is what unconscious incompetence is. Second is the conscious incompetence. The person in this stage is still incompetent, but they are now conscious of that fact. In other words, conscious incompetence is when you are doing something wrong, but you know you are doing it wrong. For example, you are learning to drive. When you first learn how to drive a stick shift, you are very quickly learn that you don't know how to do it. Third is the conscious competence. When you are doing something right, but you have to consciously focus on doing it the right way. For example, as you practice driving a car, you can start to think your way through it. In other words, you know how to do it, but you have to think your way to do it. Fourth is the unconscious competence. In this stage, the person has practiced the skill so much that it comes intuitively and without difficulty. For example, as driving the stick shift becomes a habit for you. Eventually, you can drive without thinking, shifting gears effortlessly while you think about other things. In other words, you are doing something right and you don't even have to think about it. Stage recognition stage 1 to 2, from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. Acquisition stage, from conscious incompetence to conscious competence. The intuition stage, from unconscious competence to conscious competence. The teaching of speaking, factors that influence speaking. Speech is the most basic of communication. Speaking in a second language has often been viewed as the most demanding and challenging of the 4 skills, according to Bailey and Savage. The goal of teaching speaking. The goal of teaching speaking skills is communicative efficiency. It is the ability to deliver clear message in the shortest amount of time. Different views of speaking in language teaching. First is the conversational discourse. The benchmark of successful language acquisition is almost always the demonstration of an ability to accomplish pragmatic goals through interactive discourse with other speakers of the language. Second is the teaching pronunciation. There has been some controversy over the role of pronunciation work in a communicative, interactive course of study. But to teach pronunciation effectively, you need several types of knowledge. You need to know the facts about pronunciation, how speakers' mouths move when they produce the sounds of language, and how word stress, rhythm, connected speech, and intonation work. Third is the accuracy and fluency. Accuracy is often what we think about when we are learning a language. It is about using correct grammar in speaking and writing. Understand the deeper meaning and usage of vocabulary, and also it involves the correct pronunciation of the words. It takes a lot of practice to be accurate, and it's something we must work towards little by little. Every week, we can exercise a different aspect of our accuracy, whether it be vocabulary, grammar, or pronunciation. And fluency is most associated with speaking. Of course, we use it when we write as well. When we have good fluency, it means that we can produce and engage with language in a smooth and effortless way. Sure, we make mistakes, but we are able to communicate our ideas. In spoken language, the question we face as teachers is how shall we prioritize the two clearly important speaker goals of accurate, the clear, articulate, grammatically and phonologically correct language and fluent, flowing or natural language. Fourth is the affective factors. Affective factors are emotional factors which influence learning. They can have a negative or positive effect. Our job as teachers is to provide a kind of warm, embracing climate that encourages students to speak, however halting or broken their attempts may be. For example, a learner's attitude to the teacher, to the other learners in the group, and to herself are all effective factors and have impact on how well she learns. In the classroom, affective factors may be as important for successful language learning, if not more so than ability to learn. Teachers can reduce negative factors and develop positive ones by doing activities to build a positive group dynamic, by including students in dividing aspects of the course and choosing activities that are motivating for the age and interest of the learners. Fifth is the interaction effect. The greatest difficulty that learners encounter in attempts to speak is not the multiplicity of sounds, words, phrases, and discourse forms that are characterized by any language, but the interactive nature of most communication. For example, giving students a task with dated pictures and having them tell each other stories about the pictures will encourage the use of the past tense in a way that helps them to consolidate their understanding of the tense. The four factors that influence learners' speaking are: first, the native language. The native language is clearly the most influential factor affecting a learner's pronunciation. Many L1 to L2 carryovers can be overcome through a focused awareness and effect on the learner's part. In most cases, the term native language refers to the language that a person acquires in early childhood because it is spoken in the family and or it is the language of the region where the child lives, also known as mother tongue, first language or arterial language. And the term L2 refer to a second language or a foreign language that's being studied. As children acquire their native language, they are exposed to this synchronic variation within their language. For example, speakers of any generation use more or less formal language depending on the situation. Second is age. Children under the age of puberty generally stand uh, an excellent chance of standing like a native if they have continued exposure in authentic context. It is generally believed that children are better at language acquisition than adults. Critical period lasts until puberty and is due to biological development. Language learning may be more difficult after puberty because the brain lacks the ability and adaptation. Third is the exposure. Research seems to support the notion that the quality and intensity of exposure are more important than mere length of time. It also refers to the contact that the learner has with the language that they are trying to learn, either generally or with specific language points. Referring to the language in general, it often refers to a contact outside the classroom. For example, a learner studying in a country where English is spoken as a first language has a lot of exposure and so more opportunities to learn. In the classroom, one of the most important tasks of the teacher is to give the learners enough exposure to examples language in different contexts and from different speakers. As a component speaker of the language, the teacher themselves can provide useful examples of language and can also use natural input from cassettes, television, video, websites, magazines, and books. 4 is the innate phonetic ability. Some people manifest a phonetic coding ability that others do not. In many cases, if a person has had exposure to a foreign language as a child, this knack is present whether the early language is remembered or not. Strategies-based institution has proven that elements of learning are a matter of an awareness of your own limitations combined with a conscious focus on doing something to compensate for those limitations. Fifth is the identity language ego. Another influence is one's attitude towards speakers of the target language and the extent to which the language ego identifies with those speakers. Students need to become aware of and not afraid of the second identity that may be emerging within them. And last, number 6, is the motivation and concern for good pronunciation. Some learners are not particularly concerned about their pronunciation, while others are. Some students are more concerned about their pronunciation than others, consequently are more motivated to improve. That's all, ma'am. Thank you.